Hey everyone, welcome to our Bright Lights in Dark Places mini-series where our goal is to interview key leaders in our communities who are being bright lights in dark places. And today we've got a special guest with us who I'll introduce in just a moment. And what this guest does is he leads a ministry that is intently focused on helping those most vulnerable in our community find help and healing in Jesus. And if you read the scriptures, what you'll find that God declares and displays his love and his care and concern for those who are most vulnerable. In fact, if you read the scriptures closely, you'll find that God actually has his most harsh words towards his own people for the ways that they've neglected those who need help in their midst. And so this is why today's conversation is going to be a good one. It's going to be exciting, and it's going to be helpful for us. And with that, I'd like to introduce Lou Carrico with Winston-Salem Rescue Mission. Lou, thanks for being here with us today.
It's good to be with you today, Seth. We appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Lou, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what is the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission and how did you get involved with it?
The Winston-Salem Rescue Mission is a non-denominational service ministry that comes along hurting people to assist them with their emotional, physical, mental, social, and spiritual needs. We minister to those in Winston, outside of Winston, to the Triad area, and really even beyond the state of North Carolina. So I guess you could say it's more like, Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria to the uttermost parts. So we've had, in particular, men enter our programs from California, from Florida. Somehow they find out about us through our website or word of mouth. And we mainly Winston-Salem, but definitely outside of Winston-Salem as well.
Tell us from your experience, what do you think are some of the largest emotional, physical, and spiritual needs in Winston-Salem?
The largest physical needs would be food, would be shelter, and would be clothing. And they're the basic security needs in life for any of us. So really, it's in a way, it's not much different than any of us in the sense of, the needs that we have. Food, I'm sure you're experiencing it with your family. Food is getting a lot more expensive under these economic conditions and recession. So it's becoming very challenging for an individual or families to put food on their table. So food is definitely a great need. Another need is shelter. Homelessness is not going away. When I moved down to Winston-Salem in 2005 with my family from West Virginia, we worked at a rescue mission up in West Virginia. It came down to Winston-Salem and began with the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission in 2005. The homeless situation at that point was, to the best of my recollection, was around 300 or so that were chronically homeless. Well, that dwindled down to around 50, to the best of my remembrance, before COVID. And then in the midst of COVID, it began climbing up again. So approximately, there are around 300, again, chronically homeless individuals in the Winston-Salem area. And those are documented, but I'm sure it's well beyond that. And so that would be another thing, shelter, simply just having a roof over your head. Another one is clothing. Growing up as a kid, I had what I needed. I usually had a good pair of tennis shoes. If it wasn't my parents, it was aunts and uncles that helped and met our needs. We were somewhat of a needy family, but I always had good clothes to wear. We've had folks show up at the rescue mission, and other staff members can verify this, and there's other factors involved where they have showed up with simply a sheet over them, a bed sheet, okay? Sometimes barefooted, okay? Again, there are other factors involved with this, but our clothing closet is, again, a way to meet the needs of the hurting. So definitely food, shelter, and clothing, that's a given. Especially when you have kids, you're growing up, their sizes are constantly changing. So I'm sure you could relate to that. as a parent.
Absolutely. So you've talked a little bit about physical needs. What about some emotional and spiritual needs that are maybe tied to those physical needs? What are you seeing with the people that you interact with?
Mm. Well, it's certainly evident just watching the news and just if you're to any extent observant, our society is really struggling with mental health disorders. There will be at times I'll be at the rescue mission, sitting on the third floor in the administrative building, and all of a sudden I'll hear somebody just yelling and screaming outside, and I'll be thinking, what in the world is this commotion? I'll look out the window and it's one individual, and they're just having a conversation with themselves, and often it's pretty loud. And again, that just goes along with the rise in mental health illness. Addictions is another ongoing and huge epidemic in our country, in our city, that we're seeing firsthand. They go together, because a lot of times if somebody has been diagnosed professionally with a mental health disorder, then they're also prescribed medication. Unfortunately, they don't like the side effects of that medication, or when they get to the point where they feel like they're okay now, they'll come off the medication, and then if they get into addiction beside that, it is just a terrible combination, to where you're dealing with emotional needs there, mental needs, addiction, or physical needs, and and then you tie in the social needs too as well. These are social outcasts. You're not really sure how to deal with folks like this, but they're people, they're souls, and so it becomes a challenge for us at the rescue mission.
So tell us a little bit about some of the things the rescue mission does to help meet those needs, for the physical needs of shelter, of clothing, of food, and also a little bit more about how the rescue mission helps people who maybe have a mental health disorder or something like that.
Okay. The physical needs, which we mentioned earlier, food in particular, we have an outreach service where we have an on-site food pantry, and we express our thanks to Center Grove, because a number of years ago, Center Grove helped us to renovate and upgrade our food pantry. And so part of our outreach services is our on-site food pantry. We also have an off-site food pantry we call Mobile Meals. We have an on-site food trailer where we have individuals that a lot of times are homeless. They might be staying in shelters during the night, and then they're back on the street during the day, or even folks just that have a job and they can't afford a lunch. So we have to-go meals through our food trailer that's also on site. We also have holiday food boxes that we assist with individuals and families for Thanksgiving, for Christmas. We have plans to also assist during Easter. So that is part of the planning right now. And also we have our meals that we serve on site and through our programs, our recovery programs, our 90-day and our 1-year programs. So that's where the physical needs are met as far as the food. We have 2 facilities where we house men in particular. We have 2 men recovery programs, Life Builders, our 90-day program, and our more extended 1-year program we call Transformers. And we can house up to 60 men in our Life Builders program, and approximately up to 35 men in our Transformers program. Now, when I say approximately, we've had to designate some rooms for quarantining when we've had COVID cases. So right now we have approximately 70 residents at our rescue mission. So again, we are not an overnight shelter. We are programs, and we try to to clarify that and to emphasize that our men stay with us 24/7, 365 days a week, and we provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner, for those men on our programs. And then also we have our clothing closet, which I've mentioned is meets another big need within our community. Folks that, like everything else, like food, clothing is going up too. And so the clothing closet has been very, very helpful. Those are the way we meet physical needs at the Rescue Mission.
And I love to hear what the Rescue Mission is doing, because some of us in our normal day-to-day lives don't take the time to think about these great vulnerabilities that are all around us. So I love hearing about the what, and I want to ask a few questions about the why, because that's also really important as to why the Rescue Mission does what it does. So in your own words, why do you think, I mentioned at the beginning that the Bible clearly has a concern for those who are hurting, for those who are vulnerable. You've got the widows, the orphans, and the fatherless is described often throughout the Old Testament, and God oftentimes is rebuking his people for not caring for those people groups enough. So my question to you is, why do you think the Bible talks so much about the vulnerable and our job in helping those people in the best way we can?
It's a good question. And I go back to in my mind the Garden of Eden, okay, where Adam and Eve, our first mother and father, were planted by God, and we know the account how God had a rule or a law that they were not to eat from a certain tree, right, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they partook of that tree. And at that point, they became a needy couple. They became outcasts. They were cast out of the garden because of their disobedience. The Lord provided their physical needs. Before all that happened, they were allowed to eat of any tree. So he was providing the sustenance, the physical food, but he also, along with providing the physical, also provided their spiritual need, which we're all created with spiritual need, and that was to walk with them, to have that personal relationship with them. And of course, that was broken when they sinned and disobeyed God's law. But at that point, the human race began to be broken and needy and outcast and hurting and guilty, and the shame and everything that goes. That's everything that's involved in being human and being fallen at that point. And really, it's just a domino effect of how it ends up affecting us today. So there are more certainly vulnerable people than others, as far as you mentioned, orphans and widows and the homeless. But in a real sense too, we're all hurting people. We're all homeless. As Christians, we know that our home is in heaven, and the Lord promises us a home through his Son, Jesus Christ. And so really from the beginning, you have different accounts of how the Lord met the physical needs, but also the spiritual needs. You have the children of Israel, you mentioned, in the wilderness, providing the manna, but also providing, God's laws. You have Jesus feeding the multitudes, the fish and the loaves, but also he's teaching them their spiritual concerns, and those that opposed Jesus were really those that needed it just as much, but unfortunately they were hypocrites and self-righteous. And the Lord, as you know, came to call not the righteous, but sinners to repentance. And so, and then he introduces himself as the bread of life. So he's providing the physical needs, but he also always provides the spiritual needs. And that's what the Rescue Mission is about. We are providing physical needs, but we can't stop there because that does not meet the full need of an individual.
That's a great answer. And kind of what I hear you saying is it all starts with the character of God. We see God doing this thing where he sees a broken world and he doesn't want to leave it this way. So he intervenes, and he continues to intervene throughout the story of Scripture. And so we just take after God's example, and we try to do the same thing with the limited power that we all have. We take that limited power and we try to help somebody else with it who is in our midst. And then you also made a great point, which is a really good segue into this next question about Jesus. He fed the crowds bread, physical nourishment, but then he also taught them. So what do you think practically is the relationship between helping somebody's physical need and helping introduce them to the one who can meet their greatest spiritual need?
Well, the connection, which again, this is a great question. I want to say that because of churches like Center Grove and our other partners, Friends of the Rescue Mission, individuals, businesses, again, churches, you folks empower us. You mentioned power. You empower us to do what we do. I've always believed that a rescue mission was an extension of the local church, if you want to say a specialized ministry, to where we spring out of the church. 5 local pastors' vision was to start a rescue mission in Winston-Salem. One of them just went to be with the Lord, John D. Moxley. I believe it was the age of 96, one of those 5 original pastors that had a vision for the city of Winston-Salem having a rescue mission. So we are your rescue mission. We are Winston-Salem's rescue mission. But again, if it wasn't for churches like Center Grove that empowers us to do it, we wouldn't be able to do it. And so, but the connection is that you have to earn a right to share the gospel, even if it's your neighbors. It's a little awkward to jump right into a gospel conversation if you haven't gotten to know them, to know their kids, to know what they do for a living, to know their names, certainly. Just the different connections to where you know what God's desire is to build that up to the point to where you can share the message of the good news of His Son, Jesus Christ. So when somebody comes to the rescue mission, it could be something as simple as a bottle of water, and it has been, literally a bottle of water to open a door. Or providing food, or a piece of clothing, or of course, addiction recovery. That is probably our primary service at the Rescue Missioners, our 90-day and 1-year program, because we have a lot of hurting folks that come to the Rescue Mission, just like you and I. You and I may turn to something else, but they have turned to alcohol, to drugs, and now they're in the situation of hopelessness, despair, no purpose when they wake up, without peace, certainly not looking forward to living under the current conditions we live in. It's a very, very difficult and dark world to live in right now. I think you probably have heard it said, believers say, I don't know how people could do it without the Lord. And that's true. And we do get folks that come to the rescue mission through outreach services and our recovery programs to where they are in despair, hopeless, suicidal, and they just don't see any point in living.
Yeah, that's such a great answer. And, the old adage is people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. It seems like that's what you said when you talked about, you got to earn the right to share with somebody, because they may not even be able to listen to you until they know that you actually care about them. And that's just one of the things that the rescue mission does so well, is they are meeting physical needs and letting people know we do care, but we've got something even better for you than this meal that will satisfy you temporarily. And that's the way that Jesus would even talk about it. He would meet their physical needs, feeding them. He compared himself to living water, of course, and so he would feed them, and then he would say, if you want to eat the bread that doesn't run out, the bread that leads to life, then come and take part in me. And so that's what I hear you saying, is it just helps open up a door for the gospel and helps people know that they're not just a part of your agenda to make yourself feel better, but that you actually do care about them. I just really, really love that. And Lou, I'd love for you to share maybe some, I don't know if you're able to share names or not, you can or you don't have to, but I'd love to hear a few stories of some people who have been impacted by the ministry of the rescue mission.
Okay. I'll start off in outreach. Now, being in my position as the executive director, I feel called to the position, but I will tell you that coming out of programs for about 13 years, I really miss being hands-on, so to speak, the hands and feet of Jesus, having those one-on-one conversations with the men on our programs and even outreach. But every now and again, I'll tell my staff, I got to get out of my cage, quote unquote, and I got to get down into the, back down to the roots, and in the trenches, and really experience some of these things so I don't lose my perspective, my focus, and what my purpose is, even as an executive director and as a rescue mission. So the other day I was helping out in food pantry. I just went down there just to see what's going on and came across a young man, and he needed some help with clothing. Actually, he came during our food pantry. It wasn't during our clothing closet hours. But, the Lord, again, spoke to me and convicted me saying, sometimes ministry is not always convenient. It's not always during your regular business hours. So we walked over to the food pantry, which now we have both food pantry and clothing closet connected to use to make the most of our space and to be good stewards there at the Rescue Mission. So, but we helped, myself and the outreach manager were helping this man. And he made the comment that trying to minister to him beyond his clothing. He says, normally for me it ends up being an assault and jail, and that's what his outlook on life was. For me, it ends up being assault and jail. I mean, what a cycle! I mean, that's just a great example of somebody that really has no hope. That's as good as it gets, So, but we did help him with some water. We helped him with some shoes. Helped them with a shirt, I believe it was. He didn't ask for a whole lot. But and I did offer to pray with him. But he said he was okay. He really didn't want me to pray for him, but I said, I'm going to pray for you as you go down the road anyway. But anyway, his name was Jacob. And I said, what a great name, Jacob. Are you familiar with the name Jacob? And how Jacob later becomes Israel? He was aware. So But he did say he was a believer. We were able to get that from him. But the one thing he kept emphasizing was, and I think he really wanted to be on his way. You really don't quite know what direction this is going to go. But he just said, you know what, you've helped me today. You've been very helpful. And I felt good about that because I tried to offer a little bit more, even prayer, but he wasn't wanting that at that moment. And that's up to him. But again, just one person, Jacob, in outreach. And then some others. Seth, I can list off a lot of names to you. But some, for our interview today, I have prepared some names. One is Joe. Joe went through our 90-day program. Joe went through our 1-year program. Joe graduated from our 1-year program. Joe did so well that we hired him as an employee, worked our front desk in our New Life Center. So he became part of our staff. Joe began attending Forsyth Tech Community College. Joe earned his associate's degree in human services. Joe today, unfortunately not part of the rescue mission, although we tried to get him on board. He's working at another local agency. He just wanted to test the waters. And so I said, that's okay, Joe. Hopefully you'll be back, as a staff member. But he is a case manager at another local agency, and that's okay. Let him be where God wants to be. Another one is Dennis. Dennis came to our 90-day program, been involved in communication and radio, but addiction got him disconnected with his family, with his daughter in particular. Dennis went through the 90-day program. It was a challenge. Which we highly recommend. Not every man takes advantage of it. We highly recommend our 1-year program. Transferred over to our Transformers 1-year program, successfully completed the program, and the Lord opened a door back into radio. As we sit here today, he is a voice on live Christian radio, doing what he loves to do, part of a worship band at a local church, has been reconnected with his daughter, and has had 2 grandchildren. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for... Now, the Lord could have used another agency, but he used the rescue mission. But I want to say, because of Center Grove and our other supporting churches, Seth, and other partners of the rescue mission, that happened. Another gentleman we have is Tyrone. Tyrone, I was his case manager when I was in programs, in Life Builders 90-day program. And he came on board on our Life Builders program out of addiction. Was with us about 4 months, and then realized that he had to go to jail. He had to pay the cost of his crime. So anyway, we allowed him to leave the rescue mission for about 5 months, and because he said he'd call me back, and he did. But I think it was the day or two, or the day of, he calls him, Mr. Carrico, I'm ready to come back. We brought Tyrone back to the rescue mission. Tyrone got into the GED program there in Life Builders. He finished the 90-day program, by the way. We hired him as an employee again. Worked maintenance, a great maintenance guy, just a great hands-on guy. Had the gift, the talent, or the spiritual gift of helps, okay, and ministry. And so anyway, unfortunately, Tyrone transitioned and left and got a better job, a better paying job at the rescue or outside of the rescue mission. Finished his GED after he left the rescue mission. Got different other credentials and certifications. Today, Tyrone is 16 years sober in recovery, active in a local church, and has just been approved through Habitat for Humanity to have to the best of my knowledge, his first home. He'll be a homeowner.
Lou, this has been a great conversation so far. And so I'd love to end our time by just asking you, how can those watching, how can they participate and pray for Winston-Salem Rescue Mission?
The participation can be met, Seth. Well, let me just say this first of all. Anything that I might miss, you could always find it in our website at www.wsrescue.org. And but as far as opportunities to participate, we have our annual banquet that's coming up. So that could be found on our website. Just a great opportunity to hear testimonies for the residents, and we are going to be focused on testimonies this year more than anything else. And also we have our annual golf tournament. That is another opportunity to participate, and we look for sponsors for both the banquet, table sponsors, and also for the golf tournament. Those folks that like to play golf and also to do it for a good cause, because those proceeds go right back in our programs. Also to volunteer at the rescue mission. We have a lot of opportunities. Landscaping. We have our food pantry, our thrift store, mentoring opportunities, our clothing closet. These are just different ways to volunteer at the rescue mission. So it's just not besides either money giving, of course, prayer, which we'll mention in a second here, but volunteering is a biggie. Some of our needs, Seth, at this point would be we need underwear at the rescue mission. I say that. And not even kiddingly, we really need just a good supply of men's sizes of underwear at the rescue mission. We need canned goods, vegetables. That's a way we can keep our outreach service through our food pantry supplied and our on-site feeding, if you would, through our programs. So canned goods. Having a food drive, that's another great way to participate. School or church doing a food drive for the rescue mission. Donations to our thrift store, gift in kind donations, physical donations like furniture. We can always use furniture. And as far as prayer opportunities, we always ask for prayer for our residents. Always the need to pray for our residents' salvation, for their recovery, and for their education, that they would go on to continue with their education, because that's very empowering. To pray for our graduates this year. We'll be having, Lord willing, 14 graduates. Last year we had 7 that graduated at Center Grove. This year, it'll once again be at Center Grove, your main campus, and your sanctuary there. The church has been very gracious over the years to let us use the sanctuary for our Transformers 1-year graduation. This year, we have potentially 14 graduates. Just pray that the Lord would give them the grace and the strength and victory over the enemy, that we would see those 14 graduates walk that platform that night. Pray for our staff. Pray for wisdom to make good decisions, strength, endurance. Pray for safety for our staff. Pray for things that we're vision we have for the future. A new facility for Life Builders, our aging 100-year-old building that houses our 90-day program, and also our endeavor to look for a second thrift store and location. We can really use prayer for that as well.
That is wonderful, and you can find more information on the website, as you just heard Lou mention. And Lou, I just want to thank you once again for joining us today. This has been a really, really impactful conversation, and I know the people who are watching this are going to benefit from listening to it and learning how they can pray for and participate in all that God is doing through the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission. As you've heard today, you know that this ministry has a heart for those who are vulnerable and hurting in our communities, just like God does. Just as God has saw a broken world and didn't want to leave it that way, so the Winston-Salem Rescue Mission is doing all it can to push back and alleviate the brokenness that is all around us. So we pray that you'll consider joining them in the work that they're doing. And we want to remind you as you go, as always, we pray that you will be God's light in all the places that He sends you and shows you. Thank you.